and welcome back to another episode of the ADH Dads. I'm CJ,
I'm JJ.
and we're glad to have you back. We're having some technical difficulties getting this started, but we're here, I think, finally. Hopefully the sound is okay on your end.
It's going well, man. Tell me a little bit about your last week, buddy. What were some highs? What were some lows? What did you learn that was surprising about your kids, your wife, your family?
Brother, it has been a week, and it's been 4 weeks. It's been a journey for us. We have spent the last week in the hospital. Our little one came down with a disease called Kawasaki. It's very rare, hard to diagnose. It's got a genetic component to it. So there is a gene that sparks this disease, but they don't know how you get it or why you get it. It seems that you get a cold or a flu and it can turn into Kawasaki, and Kawasaki affects the blood, it affects the heart. So we were on a journey, and the tough thing about this is exactly 1 year ago to the date, we were in the hospital dealing with this with our youngest. And this is typically a disease that only affects kids 5 and younger. But this current one, our oldest just turned 8. So they were kind of baffled that she had this. And the first time that we did this with our little one, it was a 2-week diagnosis process. They had all sorts of rare disease specialists and teams come in to try to figure out what was going on. And it took about 2 weeks before we finally got a diagnosis, which was very stressful and very scary, not knowing what was going on. This went a little bit quicker during this round because as soon as we said our youngest had Kawasaki, the doctor's ears perked right up and they said, oh shit. And they started treating it as such, because there's no test to figure out if it's Kawasaki or not. There's just about 50 other tests to discount 50 other things. And by the end of that, they scratch their heads and they go, oh, it must be Kawasaki if it's not these other 50 things. But our journey started with a cold that turned into strep throat, that turned into an ear infection, that turned into Kawasaki. And while that was going on with our oldest, our 2 younger ones also got the strep throat part of it and the ear infections part of it. So Mama was in the ER and I was trying to navigate the kids, and the hospital was across town 2 hours away. So hospital visits back and forth were a chore to get, Mama and Naomi everything that they needed while they were in the room. And so, man, I haven't had a chance to breathe, really. We're just kind of coming towards the tail end of this. Naomi got a blood transfusion last week to replenish her red blood cells because they were taking blood out of her, but she was not producing red blood cells. And her blood was inflamed and her brain was inflamed. So they had to go do IVIG, which is basically like flushing the blood with antibodies, trying to get rid of the sickness. And that didn't take well. Her body reacted negatively to that. So we had to go do a full-on blood transfusion and give her some red blood cells. So that was kind of scary too, putting somebody else's blood in our little one. And she was having a lot of anxiety about them just putting in the IV to take blood. She was processing it through the brain of an 8-year-old, saying, don't let them take my blood. I need my blood. And it was scary for her. So, a week later when we had to have that conversation, hey, they're going to put somebody else's blood into you. Man, that was some stressful times, stressful conversation with our little one there to get her on the same page and understand what's going on. So yeah, I think we were going to take a break to talk about crisis mode today, and how to kind of just show up for the family when shit's hitting the fan and things are going awry and curveballs are getting thrown at you. Definitely not saying that I have the answers here, but I definitely helped carry my family through this month here, and I kind of wanted to talk about what that looked like and what that process was for us.
Well, that's definitely sounds like crisis because, while you can say, yeah, we just dealt with Kawasaki with our youngest last year, it's a weird thing to basically hear, okay, well, then that means we as a hospital staff, we're going to test for all these other things to then get narrowed down to this thing because we don't exactly know enough about this thing. Do you have any sort of understanding as to why there's so little known about this? And then, talking about crisis, you're basically in crisis mode waiting room because you can't really move forward when you don't have answers, yet you have somebody suffering in crisis mode in your little one there. So she's going through all this hell, and then you're talking about blood transfusions and stuff, all this stuff that essentially is taking more time as she continues to suffer. What does one do when you know and then you don't know at the same time? So you're in crisis mode, and you're a parent trying to somehow create a sense of peace and calm when you know there's so much beneath the surface that's just kind of constantly moving and not moving in the direction you'd like it to.
Yeah, that was definitely the hardest part about the process was the waiting game and waiting for results and answers. Your mind can definitely go 100 different directions and 100 different speeds with that. But I thought that where I was doing good throughout this process was just maintaining presence. It didn't really serve our family to worry about the results or what the next step was until we had all the information. So, I really tried to focus on what can I bring to the here and now, and while we're in the waiting room or while we're waiting for the answers. And that looked like board games and cards and a lot of drawing, and keeping the thermostat at a comfortable level, for everybody, as the husband of this family and stepfather and leader of our dynamic here. I feel like it's definitely my job to be that thermostat, and keep everybody at a level of calm that is maintainable throughout this process. Because yeah, a lot of stuff does come up. You're right, and it's a lot of uncertainty. So you can't worry about too much in the moment.
So can I ask you something, Colton? Because you said something there that I as somebody who's listening to this struggle with is like the idea of keep everybody calm. Well, how do you keep everybody calm? What does that look like? We can say it, but then when we're in the middle of it, I'll give an example in a bit, but I really want to hear what your experience was, and what are the thoughts and feelings that go through your head when you want to keep everybody calm and you've got a little one who's still like this. I'm still hurting. I'm still struggling. I'm still sleeping 20 hours a day or whatever it is, to try and battle this.
Yeah, when I first started the stepdad journey, I would struggle a lot with the mentality of, I mean, when there's three kids and a wife and a dog and everybody needs something, you can go days and sometimes you don't get a complete thought in your head, right? You're interrupted by the things that you need to do. Oh, I got to put my shoes on. I got to brush my teeth. But little one can't find their shoes, or they can't find their lunch or the snack that they want, and your thoughts kind of can get derailed. And I used to that used to really derail me, in the early stages of this, where I just need my thought. I just need to have my thing. But I found that I can really show up and be there by pivoting and just kind of surrendering to that. Um, it's when I need Coley's thing right now or whatever is where it gets hard to manage. But in these like crisis moments where things are going on, I felt that I've had a lot more success, and with my patience, with my tone of voice, and with helping the rest of the family process, if I can just kind of just lean into it and just give it my full attention, um, yeah. So I'm still struggling with that, and I still have to exercise that on a daily basis. And we talked with a guest last week about preparedness, with Ray King, and when asked the question, what makes a good leader to him, he said, preparedness. And I kind of went on a rant about saying I didn't really see that or resonate with that, but as I've gone on through parenting, I see that that's a vital thing. But I also think that the kind of impromptu, the pivoting, and the able to switch for what is the crisis in front of you has been a huge strength of mine. To just we'll get back to Coley's thought, but let me give my full presence to this. And I don't know, I might spark some controversy by saying that a lot of people might say you need self care through you got to take care of yourself as you're going through these crisis times too. And I'm definitely not arguing against that for sure. You do need to finish the thoughts in your head in the sentence at some point, to to feel complete, to feel whole. But when things are going awry like this, and it's so heavy with health, finances, whatever the crisis is, sometimes just being present, asking the right questions, and getting the temperature of everybody else in the room is a really good place to start for me. Because if I'm just trying to have Coley's thoughts all the time, I ain't gonna have the answers, and I'm probably gonna stumble and mess it up. But if I'm present and able to ask questions and practice the curiosity piece that we've talked about on this podcast, it helps me diffuse, get more information, arm myself with more tools, and really kind of just alleviate some of the tension that's going on. Because when stress balls up like this, it really does not serve anybody to be sitting there in the corner wound tight, as we're waiting for answers.
Yeah, I think you said a lot of things there that really do resonate with most people. I mean, the simple thing is you have connection and you are learning this family. You're learning these kids, you're learning your wife every day. I mean, the opportunity to pursue those relationships every day, not when just things are going horribly or challenging. That's when you really find a way to create that calm and peace with those connections when things are difficult, making that pivot because, oh, I now understand this person in a greater way, and I can help them through this moment by basically acknowledging them through experience with them. So what does that look like? I mean, it could just simply be you talk about something that the two of you shared together, or you've had another moment in the past where maybe they needed comfort. A great example would be just giving a hug, to our kids who maybe their love language is physical touch, and having that close proximity gives them that calm and peace that they need. Or, laughter, comedy, whatever it is. If your kid has a joke that they love, it's not always ideal in certain moments. They're not going to just turn, from an open wound and start laughing at your joke. But at the same time, you have that opportunity to open that connection up when they are struggling, through humor when it's said and done. Because we will experience some extreme levels of pain and suffering at times that we can either lean into or we can work with as we progress through them. My example that I can think of, which maybe I've shared previous, is when Cohen fell in the river or the creek back in 2020, I think it was, and he sliced open his hand to a horrifying degree. It's like something you only see in horror films, and you don't expect it or anticipate it at all with your own kiddo. So I had to rush him to the ER. Well, again, April 2020, what does that mean? It's during COVID, which get to the ER and only one parent can be with the kid in the ER. So here I am, he's laying on the table, and they said that they were going to knock him out with with anesthesia. They didn't. Kept him awake. They gave him painkillers, but he was awake. So when they said they scanned his hand and said there's a pebble in there, we need to get that out before we, then stitch him up. They're opening this wound up, and it doesn't matter how much painkillers you got. When you're awake, somehow you're going to feel the pain.
Yeah.
He was screaming, arching his back, yelling, "Mommy, mommy, mommy, mommy!" And of course, mommy wasn't there. obviously through their, loving relationship as her, as her being his mom, the nurturer for so long, that was a big source of comfort for him. And now he had dad. And I was calm, at least on the surface. I was calm, and I was holding him, and he was screaming mommy constantly. I said, hey buddy, I'm here. And tears were falling from my face, even though I was still presenting myself as a calm, collected person. I was screaming on the inside as well. And then at one point he just yelled at them, give me back my hand, because he was terrified. He was in pain. He was hurting. And I knew the only way to get through that moment was to just simply be in the room. Um, Stuff came later, and I talked about the things we could do afterward, and visit with mom and call mom. But in the moment, when you're in that emergency more than crisis, suffering is real and it's real hard. But those connections that you have when you are present with somebody, it still means much more to them. Even if you can't provide them with a physical pain relief, that emotional relationship is still carrying them through. So back to your point there, just being present and having that, that connection that you've carried through this is going to help our kids especially get through.
Yeah, one of my core values is humor. I think that really carried the family through this time here. Is um, and I think that bringing or alleviating some of the tension with a little bit of humor is a good strategy to have, but I also think that a lot of people can misconstrue what humor is. I think a lot of people think humor is like making fun of something or someone, and I think that humor is kind of pointing out the ridiculousness in a situation so that we can all connect to it. And I know that when I was younger, my humor was more based on maybe putting other people down, And through my comedy journey out in LA here and doing a lot of stand-up comedy and studying comedy and all this stuff, I've grown into the more of the mindset that, if we can just poke fun at a situation rather than tear somebody down, I think that, it all kind of makes us just giggle and smile and in the times of stress. So, I really carried that with me and tried to, bring some dad jokes to the hospital and, some board games and stuff like that. And just try to keep it fun and airy as, even though, like you say, on the inside, I'm screaming and stressed out completely, these moments also offer a little bit of a break from that, from the tension, from the seriousness of it. And, I've learned that, my Coley time, how I get back to me and how I clear the mind and take some breaths and recenter myself is really through the family. I don't look at my playtime with the kids as an obligation or a responsibility, but rather something that I get to do that, makes me not feel like an adult anymore. And I can kind of let all the 4-letter words of responsibility fall to the wayside as I just play dolls or build Legos for a little bit, and when I started switching that to this is what I need to de-stress versus this is something I have to do to be intentional or put in time or to spend time with the kids, is really when it started opening up for me. And I started getting that relief from those moments, those one-on-one connections or talks or the playtime with the kids. It didn't feel like something that I had to do. So, going into this hospital stay, that was my relief. That was my way of recentering, was being able to go visit Naomi and do some art with her and have the kids here and make dinner together and keep them distracted. Made me feel like I was doing my part as the leader of this family, that I was keeping everybody's hearts full, and hope strong,
And that's not easy, even when you do have a good, close relationship with a family member, kids and stuff. Is they're still going to throw curveballs at you in response, and that's really hard. And what does it look like to you to stay the course, even when maybe you miss the mark in a moment? I mean, I guess one example I have is, Cohen. Cohen does like to joke around, and he does have a tendency to have like almost like a coping mechanism, or just a a way to regulate himself, to kind of feel centered. He'll sometimes hum a tune or make sounds based on something he's experienced, and then maybe I'll try to play along, and he'll get upset. He'll say, "Stop that!" And I tend to ask him the question like, "Well, I was hearing you do it. I thought maybe you'd like me to do that as well." And it turns out he didn't, and he tells me his reason for doing it isn't matching my reason, which I find fascinating. But it does have this tendency in me to maybe feel a little bit of defensiveness, but then also try and make a pivot. How do I comfort him in this moment? Sometimes he'll give big emotional responses, where he's upset and he's actually raised his voice at me, and that's a moment where I basically am now challenged to be a good parent and listen and not lose my cool when my son probably is wanting a teachable moment there. A good example recently, he did lose it on me, and he got emotional in the situation. It wasn't for anything that, from my perspective, was a big deal. But then I just simply asked him, like, "Hey, buddy, what do you need in this moment? Do you need anything from me?" And he said, "Yeah, I think I just need a hug." And I was like, "Awesome! I can give out hugs all the time." And he hugged me, I hugged him, and then he said, "I love you," and we were back to everything's cool and collected. So the presence, the power of that is great. But at the same time, my question back to you is, when you are hit with that curveball in return, what's the next step?
Thinking about my whys, and why it's important to show up and keep the calm. Um, I don't think it really does anybody any good if we're all running around like chickens with our heads cut off. And like we were saying, I think it's my job to exemplify that, for future crisis moments when maybe I'm not around, and things are falling apart. Hopefully, my kids will have seen that example of cool, calm, and collected, and curious, and maybe they'll be able to exemplify some of that themselves. Because I think that that's really what presence is for me, is curiosity. We've talked about that in the past before, about asking the right questions or in the right way. Um, and yeah, I'm no doctor, man. I don't know shit about Kawasaki or how to treat it or what the next step is. So the more questions that I asked and the more present I am to hear the responses, the better I'm setting myself up for the future decision that needs to be made. So it's not always easy. It takes a lot of recentering, refocusing. I think I had to remind myself at least 5,000 times a day to breathe and to think, before responding or to give an opinion. So yeah, I mean, I think, and that comes from a lot of work that we've been doing here over the last few years in the dad space and with the podcast and with coaching, and just arming myself with techniques, strategies.
So you're in a situation where you know there is there is no easy answer. There's no easy out. We have to persevere through this pain, through this suffering. What looks different in that moment than when you're just having a maybe an argument, or a disagreement? What perseveres in those moments, and comes out with an ideal outcome?
I think it's recentering towards the family unit and towards the team, towards the tribe here, of what we do. That though stuff is being thrown at us, I think that there's a really great connection during these moments to bond with the family and to come together, rather than to go off in your room on your phone and to not think about it. The more that I think that we can sit in the room together and talk about it and create a safe space to answer the kids' curiosities too, because they're scared, right? A little sister and baby brother at home, and they don't know what's going on, and they're looking for me to explain it to them. So, again, if I'm flying off the handle with all of my emotions and trying to process it, it doesn't really give them any security, or feel safe when even maybe when it just comes to being curious about what's going on. Well, shit, Coley, Coley broke down and cried last time I asked him that question. I don't want to cause that emotion again. So I think just holding strong, and that it's okay to ask, and it's, the more that I can show that it's not a scary thing as long as we stick together and that we have the support from each other. I think that really, really helps carry us when there's an answer to a question that I don't know, or I don't know what the next step is, or how to diffuse it. I don't always have to have the fix it to diffuse the situation. A lot of times I can do that just by being present and just asking the questions and figuring out what's going on with my little ones they're asking the questions.
So when you're expressing, or you're having hurt and pain expressed to you, and you're not directly experiencing that pain, but through your empathy and whatnot, you experience it in your own way. How do you have the difficult conversation? How do you empathize without just kind of fully leaning into it, and kind of suggesting that suffering is the moment, or suffering is the outcome? How do you balance that, especially with our kids who are feeling suffering in the moment and they live very much in the moment? Does it help them to say, oh, it's going to be better soon, or is that kind of pushing against what their feeling is in the moment? Do we comfort by saying, oh, that I empathize, I feel for you, this is very difficult pain, and then do we suggest, like, say, this is going to heal this young one, by saying it's going to be better soon? Does that actually provide comfort, or is that something that we're just trying to say in the situation because we don't know what else to say?
Yeah, I think you just hit it on the head there, because honestly, it was the most difficult part about this process, was watching our little one in pain and not being able to help or fix it or take it away, and finding the words to carry her through that was difficult, right? Like, yeah, you don't know what to say, and you do resort to, it'll be over soon, or it's going to be okay, and those don't help in the moment. There was a lot of bribery, JJ. You know, there was a lot of toys that were bought, a lot of art books and activity books. We went with the bribing method of, you get through this, Coley will go right next door to Target and get you a doll. And that maybe worked to a certain degree, but I think that what I noticed in having a lot of success in getting her through those moments was relating to her about the time that I went through the hospital or went through something similar, or had to walk through that too. And just knowing that I got out of it and that I'm here to talk to her seemed to be pretty comforting, and a lot of confidence building, like, wow, you were so brave. That last thing that we did, I was so proud of you, the way that you got through that. You're so strong. I don't know how you did that. I wouldn't be able to do that. That kind of talk and that verbiage really seemed to empower and help Naomi and give her courage to go into the things. Because there was a time that the IV fell out and we had to re-put it in. Oh my God, brother. It was 6 hours of them trying to put this IV in, and they missed 6 times. They just kept poking her, and they got one arm 4 times, and okay, we can't do this arm anymore. They got to go over here, and they did another 3 times, and it was a meltdown and crying every time. We had to pin her down to the bed, and that was hard too, as a parent, to not only not be able to take the pain away, but also be like the cause of it, or the one that's helping inflict it, to help her down. It was definitely hard parts. And I had some moments where I had to, after like the 4th time, I had to leave the hospital, because I was getting worked up, and just seeing her in pain and getting poked, and the tears. I'm not good with gore or shots in general. I get very weak, but I was able to handle that, but I wasn't able to handle her screams and her agonizing cries of pain. That was so difficult. And I had to just take 20 minutes, walk around the hospital to just shake that off, because I was like jittering, I was shaking just from all that noise and sound and pain. So it's hard, man. And I don't know if there's a right thing to say,
Well, we're social and emotional creatures, and not only that, we strive to have deep connections with the people that are closest to us. And I think you hit on something throughout what we've been discussing here that is always worth highlighting. Whether we're talking about somebody who we care about comes to us with a problem, and when we circle back around at the end of the conversation, they say, "Hey, just thank you for being there. Thank you for listening." A lot of times when trauma is being experienced, by our little ones, or just by anybody in general, when they have somebody of love and support, sometimes they'll say, "Yeah, that was torture, but you were there. You were there for me, and that really helped me through that." They don't necessarily have the opportunity to voice it in the moment, but yeah, that pain, having somebody, a stranger, come in and only them be involved with your little one, that's not going to bring them the comfort they need. We're emotional. We place a lot of our own emotional equity in the relationships we have. So you being there, even though it was traumatic for you as well, was a huge, huge thing for this little one. I think back. I don't know why this is coming to my mind. I apologize if this comes across offensive, but when my ex-wife and I, we were married, we the only blending of families we did was with our dogs. We didn't have any kids at the time. um, but of course, a lot of people say dogs become family members. They have this way of kind of bringing us joy and stuff, and we create connections with animals, which is pretty spectacular. And our dachshund ended up having her back go out, and it was a pretty traumatic thing, especially for my wife. And we had a surgery done on her, but unfortunately, she wasn't coming back from it so much. We were having to bring her outside, hold her, and help her relieve herself outside. It was a lot of work, and in the end, we ended up having to put her to sleep anyways. That was really hard. But my wife, while we were in that final couple moments with our dog, my wife, she just kept saying to her, "I'm here, I'm here, I'm with you." And this dog passed away. It was very difficult to watch. I was incredibly moved by her, being able to be present and support this little creature that we love dearly. And so even if I'm trying to tell myself a story about what this dog might have been feeling, I knew that the person that was standing there with me was very empathetic and present and caring enough to just be there to comfort regardless of the situation. And that's what pulls us through a lot of these difficult times, I think, is like what you said again. It's just being present, being there, being willing to listen, showing up, whatever we want to call it. Just offering up that physical presence, of course, with all the knowing and the empathy that you've built up over these years, to then eventually move on to that next phase where we're healing and we're looking back on this and saying, "Hey, we did this together," and then kind of reiterating, like, "Wow, all I really needed was that you were there, and you were there. You showed up for me, and that made all the difference." That's huge, because man, when you're experiencing the scariest moments of your life, whether it's physical pain or something else, if you just have that one person that you have a true loving relationship with, your I mean, I don't have the numbers with me, but your biological responses are always in better favor than when you're with yourself, or when you don't have somebody you love with you.
Yeah, and you're right by saying sometimes all we need to do is just be there, especially when we're in crisis mode in a hospital. You can't take away the pain. You still need to get the IV. You still need to get the treatment. We can't, sometimes we can't take away those things from our kids. And so what do we do in those moments where we're at a loss for direction or advice? And I think that it's okay to show our kids that we don't have the answers, and that even though we don't have the answers, we ain't going nowhere. We ain't gonna leave them to figure it out on their own. That we can just be there and not have the answers together. And sometimes that's enough to get through the moment, And you learn what the answer is through walking that together, you know. So yeah, I think that just being there, you don't even have to say anything. I think just showing up at the hospital and doing those art things and sitting with her, even if I didn't know what to say, really resonated with her. And we had some proof in the pudding with that too, towards the end of our stay, where Naomi just out of the blue says, "I have such a wonderful life." And Mama said, "What do you mean?" She just said, I'm just really blessed. I have the best mama, and I have the best dad, and I have the best sisters, and I have the best stepdad. And how cool is that? She's in a hospital bed, tubes sticking out of her, needs a blood transfusion, and could die. And she's able to express this gratitude and the blessings in her life. I think that speaks volumes to me as a parent, to see that she's able to have that love and hope and optimism about her when everything's fallen like that. So,
And the power of children and the wisdom that they already carry with themselves, when we just allow them the space to, not allow them, but just give them the space to kind of work things out on their own while we're present with them. They really shine. Having her be able to speak her mind through that difficult moment. What stuck out for her most was just those connections that she has, and that's a beautiful thing.
yeah,
Kids
I'm,
are
I'm happy to say she's not leaving the hospital talking about all the shots that she got. She's leaving the hospital talking about all the drawings that she did and the new toys that she got. So, bribery worked this time. It
yeah,
doesn't
yeah.
always, but
Yeah, I mean, my kiddo has ADHD, and I know there's things that add to the complexity of relationships there. One of the big things that we, well, I should say maybe I struggle with more than he does. I'd have to kind of really, dissect this a little bit. But he'll a lot of times just focus on self and what his needs are, what his wants are in the moment. And in social situations, that can push people away. And we've experienced a lot of that pushing away of people unintentionally, because he just wants to do things. He wants things within his own power and his control, that other kids feel like they're not being heard, not being seen by him. And that's struggle, because what do I do if I try to enter into the equation and say, "Hey, buddy, pay attention to this," or "You can't play with all these things at once. What do you think about sharing?" He generally tries to keep things close to him, and he's like, "Well, I don't want them playing with this because I either might want to play with it, or because it means something to me and I don't want somebody messing with it." I don't know. There's a lot of possible thoughts that I'm still trying to work out with him. But when it all is said and done, I know that my kiddo actually truly wants deep connection, as well. One example recently, I got a single father as a neighbor whose kid loves to play with my kid. Um, and the two of them, they get along, and they also kind of do their own thing, and we make it work. Um, and it's always nice to sometimes have time and space between them so they can recharge and come back to wanting to play together again. But the one boy's father had to go in and do some work, and so I was outside with my dogs in the dog park, and the boys decided they wanted to go outside of the dog park and play on their own. Well, we have a couple of spaces where they want to climb on, and it's, when you're a parent, you're like, "Oh, this looks like it could be a little bit of a dangerous situation." So I'm checking on my dogs, checking on the kids, and the next thing I hear is boom. Well, that was the sound. That was the sound of this other boy falling from this wall. That I kind of said, "Hey guys, I don't know if you should be climbing on that wall." To which, of course, "Wow, that wall sounds amazing. I got to go on this wall." And then the kid fell, and and I was like, "Oh crap! I gotta contact the dad." He wasn't responding, so I just I was looking at my dog, who was trying to go underneath the fence of the of the dog park to catch up to me, and I know she's just gonna run off if she gets underneath that fence. So I'm managing these kids somewhat, and I just said, "Hey buddy, are you okay? Can you stand up?" And he kept screaming, "No, no, no." So I didn't know what kind of emergency crisis situation we had on our hands. But then my little guy, Cohen, who oftentimes is thinking about, what can Cohen get out of this? What can Cohen get out of this? What can Cohen get out of this? He goes down to this boy, and he pats him on the back, and he says, "Are you going to be okay?" Because he knows at some point in there, this kid tapped into some sort of experience that he's had in his past, his limited past, and realized that the comfort sometimes is just that little pat on the back, that checking in, that presence, that hug. And he wants to provide that to this kid who's scared, who's struggling, who's hurting. And I was blown away by that, because too often with my kiddo with ADHD and working through this egocentrism and developing to, greater empathy, I sometimes don't give him the benefit of the doubt. I just figure he's just going to, want to do his own thing. But when the time called on him, he listened and he answered and he showed up for this kid. And the next thing you know, this kid comes walking up the hill, still teary eyed and stuff. But my son did something that I try to model toward him more often than not, which I stumble so many times in these moments where I don't show up. Instead, I find out that I've created an agenda in my head because I'm teaching my kiddo. Really, I'm just trying to change directions in my kiddo because I haven't trusted him enough to actually find the ideal path for himself. And then he's just like slapping me in the face with like, yeah, check this out, Dad. I'm going to check on him and give him some comfort because I know that helps. And you've shown it to me. His mom shows it to him all the time. And then they do it themselves. And then they let others know just how much it means to them for us to show up, whether they do it for others or they just simply acknowledge it, like you experienced with Naomi. She was expressing everything in those moments because she realized, I've got everybody here who loves me, and I'm going to let them know this is what means the most to me. Yeah, I was in pain and I was suffering, but I didn't do this alone. I had the people that mean so much in my life come and do what they do best, which is be with me and be present. And that's sometimes all you need in crisis. You can't fix everything in the moment, especially when it's a wound, doesn't heal immediately. But man, those wounds hurt far less when we've got somebody there with us.
Yeah, man, it's a big miss that we make as parents. I think we're always trying to fix or teach, or there's always a lesson that we're trying to get in, and I think that's overcomplicating it. Sometimes we just need to show up with a hug, and our arms open. And I think there's a lot of power of relinquishing that control that we want to have as parents to teach and have these teachable moments all the time. And sometimes the best moment that we can have is just the moment that is, the crisis and all, tears and all, snot and blood and bruises. Sometimes, just being there can really exemplify something that is showed later, like Cohen did with that. You're stressing yourself out, becoming this ball of anxiety, thinking of what's the perfect thing to say to this kid, and what am I going to say to my kid, and how am I going to teach my kid to show up for this kid? And look at it, it's played out right in front of you. And again, I think that's really goes back to that curiosity piece that we talk about. We don't have to have the answers all the times, guys. Your kids can have some pretty good ones. Give them some confidence and some freedom to fix a problem themselves, or to show up and be there for themselves. Watch what that looks like. Get some information on how your little kid wants to be soothed. Maybe in that moment where you don't have the answers, maybe they'll tell you.
And what does a perfect life look like? When everything's going right all the time, what does that really look like for us? I don't think we wouldn't do a lot of learning and growth if we just had everything go our way. So when they present us with a challenge, man, is it a great opportunity to be curious? One thing that I've practiced sometimes, guys, and I think this is a good exercise for everybody, is let's say something didn't go right. Maybe you made a mistake, or maybe the situation went okay. If you can step outside of yourself, just imagine the situation where now you're an observant. You're just observing yourself talking to your kiddo, or talking to your spouse, or talking to whoever. Try to think about what it is or what you're thinking about in that situation, what the other person is thinking about. What are they thinking about? How are they feeling? What's their body language look like? If you ever get the opportunity to step out, like I did in quite a few episodes back, talking about having that camera in the room and me being a little bit too aggressive with my body language with my kiddo, I got to see myself in that moment and realize, man, I need to make some course corrections here. When we can do that, maybe we don't have the video, but we do have the opportunity to use our empathy meters to step outside of the situation and say, okay, this is what I see this person doing. This is what I see this person doing. What are they thinking? And how are they feeling in this moment? What would I want if I was feeling that or thinking that from the other person? How can I learn from this moment? Even though now it's past, there's a great learning opportunity because things didn't go completely well. I can work toward the next situation by not simply moving on and then, giving myself all the, the pep talks like, oh yeah, they were in the wrong this way. They were in the wrong that way. Well, now let's just try to be in that person's shoes. What ways did I miss the mark? That's a very beneficial thing for me as an exercise to really, especially, with my kiddo, because that's the person that I interact with most, to really live up to the person that I'm supposed to be as a parent, to kind of step outside of myself and say, hey, this is a little kid, man. This little kid is impressionable. This little kid can be hurt easily. This little kid can be loved very easily as well. What did it look like? What could you do?
Yeah, what's coming to mind for me is the conversation that we had with Ben Kaloy a couple weeks ago, and it also comes from the book Scream Free Parenting, that we are responsible to our kids, not for them. And I think that kind of goes in line with what we're talking about here. I can't do the treatments for my kid. I can't take the IV for her. I can't take away the pain, but I do have a responsibility to show her how we're going to move forward, how we're going to stay calm during it, or what that looks like. I can't take away the pain. I can't fix it. I can't walk it for her, but I can walk it alongside of her. And something that Ben said that resonated with me was, when you're responsible for your kids, you're taking responsibility from them. And that's our job here as parents, right? Is to teach them how to walk through these hard times, these crisis modes, how to show up for their family in the hospital when their little one is like this. And that responsibility to them, I think, is a really big piece of our reactions and our responses in moments of crisis or moments that don't align with what we think that should be done versus what somebody else does. And I think the responsibility to them is practicing the curiosity, finding out what they need, how they would proceed, and what would make them better. And you can't do that if you're just shoving opinions down people's throats the whole time.
Mm-hmm. And you know how easy it is for us to, when things are going fine, when things are going well, that we lose sight of that curiosity.
Yeah.
When you keep that in focus and you keep practicing that when things are going well, man, does it pay off when things aren't going well? Because now you're practicing curiosity when you're regulated, when things are going well, but then you get hit with that curveball from the kiddo or your spouse and stuff. But you've been practicing curiosity. Now you're turning back again to them. You say, man, I see them when they're doing well. I understand them when they're feeling great. I need to understand them when they're not feeling well. Well, one of the reasons why is simply like, can they trust me in the moments where we're getting along and when we're having a little bit of challenge? Or am I going to have them decide at some point that they have to shut that part off? I don't want them to shut that part off. When is it okay for parents to decide, well, now I'm uncomfortable, so therefore you figure this out. I don't want to deal with you. Like that trust eventually erodes into the other side. They're wanting to be with you when things are going well in their world. They want to show up and have conversations with you about the things that they're struggling with, or just, what's going to be your favorite food for dinner, something. If you give them that curiosity in those good moments, and then you carry that over to the difficult moments, man, is that relationship actually still growing stronger in those difficult moments? Man, I would love to argue with somebody that every time they argue their point, I say, oh yes, and I carry on the conversation with a positive rather than denying their perspective, whether it's true in my eyes or not. Giving them the luxury, the opportunity to actually have a voice here, and then carrying the conversation on, as opposed to simply just waiting for them to shut up so then I can tell them where they're wrong. man, that trust building happens in every moment, especially the moments that suck, you know?
Well, man, I come from a comedy background, like we're talking, and I've done a lot of improv and spent a lot of time at Second City, doing classes and writing workshops and stuff. And one of the rules in improv is yes, and you never say no when you're doing improv. That derails the whole thing. It's whatever your partner gives you, it's yes, and you add to it. And man, that's an important skill to have in my communication and life. That doesn't just go for comedy and entertaining people. Like, what a beautiful conversational skill to have. Yes, you are right. And here are my thoughts, rather than no, you're wrong and this is why. You know, we need to build people up, and we need to, especially our family members and our little ones, instill that confidence. And with that yes and kind of mentality, you really open yourself up to a lot of potential opportunities, information, and ways of handling it. Because I think the miss a lot of the time when crisis mode comes up in our family unit is like, we want to get through it, right? You just want to, like, oh fuck, I don't want to know about this, I just want to get through it. How do we fix it? I don't want to know why it happened or how it's happening. I just want it to end. What do we need to do to end this and move on? And I think that if we can pause for a second and be like, oh yeah, this is painful. Ooh, why is this painful? Where is that pain coming from? What is happening here? And how can we proceed through curiosity? I think is really providing a really beautiful opportunity to have the answers that you weren't open to.
Oh man, I just pictured The Office. You mentioned improv comedy and Michael Scott. He has this strong desire to be a performance, artist, and he goes to improv. He wants to be a brilliant improv comic, but what does he do? He just wants to control the situation the whole time. So he comes in, I got a gun, and everybody has to just immediately
and we do that as parents, man. We come into the conversation with a gun. Listen to me. All right, I've got the answers, and we point that thing at them, and God, I just think that there's such a great opportunity if we're sitting in crisis mode rather than trying to push past it. If we're present for it and can ask some good questions, think about what that looks like on the other side. When we do get through it, how much stronger we'll be, how much more prepared and ready we'll be for the next curveball that's waiting around the next corner. But if we're just like trying to rush and get through it and keep our head down and go around it rather than through it, what are we really learning? What are we teaching our kids? And how are we going to get through the next thing?
Yeah, it's wonderful to be a participant because you see some amazing things that you might otherwise not have been able to experience. I've got a great example from this last weekend, which was Mother's Day, by the way. We love all you mothers out there. Thank you for providing us with such care and love. I actually had kiddo on Mother's Day, but he wanted to buy her flowers. He picked him out 24 flowers. 24 roses, pretty special. And then we surprised her with the flowers and brought them up to her place. And he proceeded to trim the stems off of the flowers and put them in the vases with her. It's just a wonderful moment. And I just kind of sat back and let it happen. And I got some beautiful pictures of him being like surgical and getting these flowers prepared for their final destination in the vase. But I allowed for him to take charge. It was my money, but man, did that create some great connection with him. And then after we left Mom's place, we went to a city park playground, one in particular that he wanted to return to. He hadn't been there in months. And what did I do? I joined him on the playground. I was climbing on stuff, climbing up over things, just with my height, I was able to go where it was just all kids and me on the playground, climbing up places. He was having a blast. We were making up, like a Mario level, of course, because he loves Mario, a Mario level on all the playground equipment. We're jumping from thing to thing. And I saw parents sitting on benches, either in their phones or talking to each other. And I had my kiddo just like lit up, smiling, having the time of his life while Dad was participating with him. something that I won't always be able to do, but can do right now. And man, I'm telling you, if Cohen was on the playground equipment, turning back to me while I'm on the bench and saying, Dad, check this out, he would have been happy for me to see him do it. But man, when we were doing that stuff together, holy cow, that imagination was running wild and he was having a blast. And I would do the yes and, he'd be like, okay, this is this. And I said, yeah, and I'm going to jump over here. And oh my gosh, the spider, I got to crawl down here, buddy. And he just was eating it up, man. Let that playfulness, that imagination come through, because you know what, guys, when you do that in those awesome moments, when the kiddos are struggling and they're hurting, they're going to come to you again and they're going to say, oh, Dad's got a great thought behind this. I really trust Dad in this moment. This means so much because I know I can trust him in that moment. I can trust him in this moment. They might not be saying that internally, but they already know that they have that security because we are the participant in their lives. We give them that space. We give them the affirmation through the S or the yes, and then we continue to let that expand itself in their world, because man, the world is a universe in their minds that's expanding constantly, and we don't want to shut that down by coming into the room and saying, I got a gun and everybody's got to pay attention to me now. We're actually giving them so much of what they need through those moments of just being present and then letting it naturally occur by giving a little bit of a push to what they're already giving to us.
And ever more so important in these crisis modes, I feel, right? Giving our kids the autonomy and confidence to figure out the crisis rather than be told how to solve it. I think that we are really setting our kids up to get through these things without us, if we're able to walk alongside them during this, and as we wrap things up here, I was thinking about my top 3 things to get you through a crisis mode here, that I kind of we talked about during this episode, but I just kind of want to reiterate it. Not really as an advice giving aspect of this, but more to connect with our listeners to just say, this worked for me and try it out. But I think if there's 3 things to remember during a crisis mode, I think the first and most important thing is remember the love. Just remember your family, and the memories and the good times don't have to stop because of a crisis. And I think that that's vitally important. And I think that my part 2 to that would be curious. Ask more questions than you are giving opinions or statements. And to wrap that up, I would throw in a little bit of humor as my 3rd one there. Life is hard. Life is serious. There's going to be lots of other crisis seasons waiting for you down the road. But I think the more that we can bring a humor, love, and curiosity to a crisis-filled situation, we are really teaching our family what it means to be a compassionate and intentional human being.
Yes, and feelings are real. And those kids, when they express those feelings and we give them that feedback of, oh man, whatever it is, that empathy, that curiosity and response. Yeah. They are ready to to give you more in return. That compassion that we hold for our loved ones, even for strangers, man, you create connection every moment when you acknowledge the person in front of you. So when they feel something and it's pain, don't let them know, yeah, that is painful. Just acknowledge that. Be affirmative. That goes so far. That keeps that trust growing.
Yeah, we don't always have to have the answers, but we should have a responsibility to show up and to show our kids what love looks like in those moments. So thank you, JJ. Thank you, listeners. I hope you guys got something out of this today. If you're in a crisis mode, God bless you. And I think the 4th piece to that is find your tribe. I got through this month here because I got JJ in my pocket, texting me all the time, and I'm in men's groups where I have a lot of other dads reaching out to me and asking updates on Naomi and what's going on and where I'm at and what I need. And that has been so vitally important because I am just one man and I do not have all the answers, believe me. And I stumble daily, especially when it's crisis mode time. But I had some really strong and good men around me to help remind me about that love and to help uh, tell me what the questions are in the right way, in the right tone of voice. And no one can do this alone, you know. So if you are in a crisis mode, and you're struggling with the love and the curiosity and the humor aspect of it, find yourself an army of guys that are like-minded and think the same way that you do, and that will build you up and help you through that season. But thanks for listening, and I hope you got something out of this today. We'll put some show notes in there for you guys talking about screen-free parenting, which we brought up a few times. We're going to have to get that guy on our podcast and teach us a thing or two, JJ. But always glad to have you along this journey with us. Thank you for your support and your likes and your subscribes and your comments and all that jazz. So until next time, we will talk at you. Thanks, guys. This is the ADH Dads, and I'm CJ.
I'm JJ.
And we'll see you next time.